Hello, hello. This is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam, and today we're going to be dealing with the question about opening or closing the eyes during your meditation practice. To peek or not to peek? That is the question. And the answer is not as straightforward or definitive as you would think. As with most of these things, there is nuance and there is the possibility for paradox and all kinds of complications. But rather than giving you a definitive answer or inviting you to stick to one method that says one or the other, I'm going to try to explain the compromise or the advantages and disadvantages of each. Let you make your own choice depending on where you are in your meditation journey and what is it that you're trying to achieve. Now, before going into specifics of each of these, it's good to take a step back and always refer back to that perfect balance of yin and yang that we're trying to create in pretty much everything that we do, and how meditation gets to the very core of that balance and tries to balance yin and yang at the most fundamental level. So if you were comparing most of the spiritual practices that we do, like breathwork this or embodiment that or trauma release or whatever, most of them are trying to tinker around with what you could call effects, right? So you have a trauma that's an effect, you deal with it at the level of the body, which is also at the level of effect. But meditation, properly speaking, is dealing at the level of primary cause, which is fundamental yin and yang. And that's where that balance is trying to be stricken. Now, if we think about eyes open and eyes closed, you can immediately assess from intuitively that eyes open is more yang, right? It's more yang, and the eyes closed are more yin. Yeah, it's a little bit more passive, and this is a bit more active, right? Now, and that means that each of them is going to carry a certain quality that needs to be understood and experimented with. Let's start with eyes closed. So with eyes closed, it's something that I would recommend for people who are starting with meditation, right? So beginners. With a double N or a single N? I think it's a single N. Beginners are trying to do not so much meditation, but they are trying to do concentration practice. So if I told you to sit down, close your eyes, and start observing the sensation of the breath, that would be typical concentration practice. Now, why is this helpful for beginners? Because in the beginning, everything distracts your mind. Your mind, as an uncultivated mind, is allowing every sensory perception and thought and memory and emotion to pull it away from its sense of self, from its center. So that what we're trying to do when we start with meditation is we are starting to take the mind, right, which is represented, say, by this circle here, which is typically going out to the senses, being pulled out, yeah, and we are trying to create a barrier that prevents the mind from dispersing itself, and we are in fact trying to do the opposite, which is we are trying to bring the mind and let it sit in perhaps only one of the senses, this being the sense of body sensation of the breath, for example, right? So in order to do that, the other senses need to be pacified and cut away from as much as you can, so that you can achieve this single point concentration on the breath in this case. You can also do it with something in your field of vision. So this could also be a flame that you're looking at, or a certain point in space that you are kind of visually focusing on. But typically we start with the breath, and the sense of sight tends to be too yang. So it's darting around looking for things. And in order to prevent that, we close our eyes and we allow ourselves to only feel the breath. So in the beginning of meditation practice, it's advisable, or concentration practice rather, it's advisable to close as many of the sense gates as you can. This is why we also recommend that you sit in a quiet room, right? So that you don't have noises that are bringing you out all the time. So you have no sense of hearing, you have no sense of sight, or just a blank sort of, that kind of purplish reddish thing that you see when you close your eyes. And all you're trying to do is to focus on the breath. So this is a more yin type of thing, and that's why we close our eyes. What are the disadvantages of this? Because there are disadvantages. Well, you can find this a little bit too yin, so you can go overboard on the yin, and that means that you become drowsiness. Yeah. I'm going to replace this little diagram with what we were trying to say about this, which is it's for beginners. It helps to focus, or closing the senses, right? Close / focus. But you can become drowsy, and when you become drowsy, that could lead to also kind of daydreaming, right? Or distraction. So so the distraction comes in from the drowsiness as opposed to from the stimulation that you're getting from your eyes. So daydream. Drowsiness, you could fall asleep altogether when you have your eyes closed. That's a big disadvantage. And again, right? You're trying to strike a balance between yin and yang. This is also one of the reasons that when you're starting, it is never recommended that you lay down. Nowadays, I do quite a bit of my meditation laying down because I have, to a degree, countered drowsiness. So I can be laid down and put my body asleep while the mind is very alert. But that is not possible in the beginning. And the reason I lay down is that then I don't have to bother with any of my body balancing and discomfort. And I can become much more yin while retaining my yang on the meditation. But that is a balance that is difficult to strike at the start. So this is with the eyes closed. Now, and there's one last disadvantage, which is... we're going to explain it on this side, and then you'll see the relationship. So on the yang side, when you keep your eyes open, that tackles the drowsiness, so you are more alert. Yeah. And you are a little bit less likely to daydream, but you are exposed to, as opposed to being exposed to internal distractions, you would be exposed to external distractions. External distractions, right? So you can be more present, you can be more alert. That counters the drowsiness and the daydreaming. But things that you see can remind you of, I need to clean my, I need to vacuum my floor. You suddenly look at your fridge and you go like, oh yeah, what am I going to have for dinner tonight, and so on. So the external triggers become much more prevalent when you are in the with the eyes open with the yang. However, if you have done the basic practice of concentration and sense withdrawal on this side, and you become a little bit more advanced, there is one massive advantage of having your eyes open, which is that you start to develop the ability to not be pulled away by external distractions while your eyes are open, as opposed to having to, this yin side with the eyes closed, you could think of it as kind of the ostrich burying its head in the sand, right? We completely shut ourselves down, and we sort of shut the world away so that we can come in touch with the clarity and pure mind. But once that ability to tap into pure mind has become strong enough, we want that ability to be applicable in daily life and to start to pervade the way you conduct yourself when you are walking around the city with plenty of distraction around. And that jump will never happen unless you start to eventually be able to do it also while your eyes are open, right? So this is a temporary stage. Now, there is another element to this. So let's just close this topic. So this is more advanced because you are able to stay focused, right? Focused plus alert. Plus alert. And external distractions are therefore tackled eventually while you're doing the eyes open. There is a caveat to this, and that is that there comes a point where you may want to go deeper than just normal concentration and alertness and go into what are called the jhanas, or the absorptions, which are very, very deep states of mind. And during those deep states, you may want to revert back to eyes closed for what you could call very advanced, right? Very advanced practice. Very advanced. And that would come way later, right? So these are the plus and minuses of each of them. If you take practices like Dzogchen or Mahamudra, they typically recommend that you do eyes open. If you do an Apana meditation or Vipassana, typically you would be doing that with your eyes closed. So again, it depends on the method that you're using. When it comes to how open or closed your eyes should be, that one there's fairly little debate about, and what they tell you is that if this is your eyes, you should be looking kind of like this. Yeah. So the eye should be you should basically be kind of letting light in with a soft, diffuse gaze. So as opposed to focusing on one narrow single thing, your gaze is very sort of soft and open, very panoramic, very soft, right? And you are also not looking at any particular thing, right? So you are just getting some input of light coming through to make the most out of the alertness that will bring you, but prevent you from zeroing in on any particular object and then triggering the thought process that typically comes from that, right? So you want to go for that sort of, your eyelids are kind of, even just letting a little bit of the iris peek through. And so you're getting that light input, which keeps you awake, keeps you more alert, but with unidentified objects all around you. I hope that gives you some practical ideas. Again, there's a practical side to it, but I think what is important is to understand the yin and yang aspects of that practical side so that you can decide for yourself what is it that you're trying to do. The same goes for sitting versus laying down, for example, or walking, right? If I'm asked, can I do a walking meditation? I would say that keeps you very, very alert, but the chances of distraction are super high, and the chances that you'll go very deep are extremely low, right? So it's a very yang thing to do. Meditation ultimately is the perfect balance between yin and yang, and we have unbalances on both sides. We either become drowsy or we become distracted, essentially, right? Like those are the imbalances on both. So if you have an imbalance towards one side, then you want to work on that until the imbalance becomes managed, and then you are able to flip to the other side and then start bringing them together. And the eyes are one of the aspects that can help you cultivate typically you would work on your weakness rather than compensate for it with a little tactic, because then you can never it's like using training wheels on your bike. If you don't train the weakness, you're stuck with them pretty much forever, and that'll impede your progress. So I hope that helps, and I'll be back with more videos soon. Cheerio.